Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. I'm your Talk Architecture podcast host with another interview with someone whom I would like to meet face to face, but I've only been with him on Clubhouse. Hello, Gary.
Hi, Naziaty. Thank you so much. It's really, really nice to see you again, though.
Yes, it's great. Another podcaster talking to a podcaster. And okay, our topic is varied today. I'll just introduce you to the listeners. Gary Yeow is co-founder of Project XYZ, a design collective engaged in wide-ranging projects from competitions to furniture and installation design, always rooted in user experience and architecture. Gary also hosts the XYZ podcast and is exploring writing, event, and curation with a keen interest on connecting the linkage between architectural education and practice, which is great because I'm into that as well. So after your graduation of Masters in Architecture at University of Strathclyde, Glasgow, you are currently practicing as an office manager at Una Group Architecture Urbanism London. So I did give you a bunch of questions, but I'm curious that you said you're an office manager, not like a project architect or design architect. Now, give me a little bit about your what is it that you're doing? What is it that you're interested in?
Yeah. Perhaps I would like to go back to a little bit from, the whole limbo, I would say, the whole limbo of how I get into architecture. So before that, I was kind of
Limbo
like
rock. Limbo rock.
it's a limbo rock. So I never thought to study architecture. I always wanted to go for aviation. I love the design of airport, always this kind of dream to work with airplanes or, flight, kind of this kind of wide ideas. Always wanted to be an aviation engineer and then change my mind to be a pilot and then change my mind to be to study mechanical engineer. And then at last, my brother told me, are you sure you want to study mechanical engineering? I was like, maybe not. Okay, then he told me there's something called architecture. It's like engineering, but it's a bit different. And then, well, my brother used to study in Taylor's, and therefore somehow automatically for the bureaucracy of family to deal with management and money. So then I went to Taylor's and then I did my architecture degree, and then it sort of changed my mind as well in a way to see architecture in a very, very, at the point in time, it's a very superficial way. Thinking that, doing architecture must build something, and particularly in skyscrapers. And then slowly I realized that it's not the thing that I would like to do in a way, because I went into an internship. I was working on, that during that time, there was a Raza mentioned this kind of huge apartment projects, which I don't really like it. And then I worked in ZLG for a year, and then I did my master in Glasgow. And then therefore, at that point in time, I was questioning like, what the hell are architects are doing, apart from designing houses for the
Yes.
riches, and also the big buildings or tall buildings, like competition, who built the most green architecture.
Is that what architects about? Yeah.
Yeah. And then I mean, there was a sense of angst or anger in when I was doing my degree. But firstly, I was quite angry about the whole system where, young students, they are pretty much competing each other, see who has the nicest, the sexiest drawing you could ever produce.
Yeah.
And you can how eloquent the presentation you have. But at that point in time, I don't believe that. I'm kind of like a Cedric Price kind of anti-aesthetic mind. So therefore, I was thinking like, okay, so if we wanted to go this direction of aesthetic or art or architectural style or movement, whatever you want to call it, therefore it's going to change how we practice, how we work, where we work, what kind of people we're going to talk to.
That's interesting. Do you think that the fact that whenever we go into first year architecture, we were taught the grandmasters, Le Corbusier, and all this, and that set the tone from the first
Yeah.
year till the end of looking for star architects.
That's so absurd at one point as well. Of course, I also look into star architects as well. I can't deny that, I don't look up to them. But I see it from the lens of marketing in a site, like how they brand themselves. It was so interesting because I was reading a book written by an MBA guy, and then he wrote a book about marketing and also the whole business of architecture practice. And as early as all those big masters, or talk about Mies van der Rohe or Corbusier, all these people, they are actually knowing how to market themselves, therefore how to share their idea to the wide public. Therefore, I am not denying the fact that a lot of architects, not because they don't have great ideas, they are simply, there is no space or habitat for them to perform or share their thoughts. Therefore, they are always cast, kind of outlandish. The best example I can say is Lina Bobadi. She did a lot of great works, but it's not really well appreciated among, when we compare, compared to Norman Foster, Zaha did, or at the time Corbusier or Walter Gropius. All these people, they are so well spoken in a very male dominated society. There are so many people who actually have a lot of great ideas, but they're just, it's not their thing to be, standing in under the spotlight to talk about things. Therefore, they are always kind of left out in a way.
This leads us to the first question on the purpose of podcasting.
Yeah.
Do you intended to, with your podcast, do you, do you have a focus or spotlight on architecture education, and how is that linking to architecture practice? I mean, when we talk about the names that you mentioned just now, and architects in general, not able to have a space and a place to express, their manifesto or their likes and dislikes about architecture. Everybody's too polite, there is no discourse that you would like to expect the architecture fraternity to be debating about. And that actually, this is kind of interesting. This is like 10 years back or something like that, when architect Lilian Tay actually criticized the Star building near Eastin Hotel, the one with you have pastiche on it, these windows, classical windows on this high-rise building. And she actually criticized it, and people quickly reprimanded her for it. In Malaysia, you can't have a dialogue at all to say or to be critical of things. But somebody was saying to me that another ex-student was saying that in Indonesia, you have more of this discourse. They are more laid back about it. Maybe the society has less a shorter or not so fast a tempo, or the developer is not ringing not on top of you as much, I suppose, in terms of the fast-paced development that we have in Malaysia. But in England, in Europe, they do have discourse a lot. Is it? They're not talking
a lot.
about Ms. Van der Rohe. No,
not in that sense, but because for what I experienced, especially at this, in year 2022 and 2023. So what I realized that there are so many events, even though it doesn't allow you to go up to the stage and to talk, but of course you are allowed to. But there is always a medium, at least it welcomes you to receive information. Then after that, you can generate questions. Well, I think the problem with Malaysia is there is no stage or platform or place for you to receive information. Therefore, when you don't have recipient of such information, how do you want to criticize? Because if otherwise, you might just talking on your own voices, which a lot of time it really depends on personality, where how eloquent or how intuitive you wanted to speak before any issues. So the issue is not there. Therefore, how do we criticize? But the very interesting thing about what I see in Malaysia is there are always issues, but people tend to express in a very introverted way, or in a very quiet place, rather than we happen in a casual conversation. We can criticize how the new PNB tower looks like a middle finger. We can talk about how bizarre the new Shah Alam Stadium gonna looks like, how flourishing it will be. But it happens in a very casual and informal conversation rather than shared to
Yeah.
everyone else to talk about it.
There's a lot
Clubhouse
on Twitter. I
a
do
lot. I
find,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, in Clubhouse, that's what pretty much me and my peers and also other much more activist architects or students or friends who might talk about it. But
Mm.
when we look into the Clubhouse circle, it's always limited to, let's say, maximum you get 100. But we are talking about like the students in so many universities. How many students are actually engaged with this conversation? I'm not like expecting each of them to say things, even though I would appreciate if they say something, but there was no mandatory effect, or there's this kind of communal activities allow people to know that, okay, I need to attend this event. But therefore, in London, what I really like is so many things happen in a way that you can choose which kind of event you want to go. And it's so diverse, the topic, in a way. For architects, you can talk about books, you can talk about furniture, you can talk about lights, and nothing to do perhaps directly into the spatial quality, but rather, you can talk about a lot of things. So
I think that you can, when you come back to Malaysia, you can find students, because you'll be in an age where you are graduate, and then you'll have people in Clubhouse. There are people like us who could engage as well on the discussion, open discussion. The likes of Kevin Martlow has been talking on his own. I mean, there are not many people like him in terms of the critique. We actually had, with Kevin Martlow's participation, some students of architecture at University Malaya, actually as far back as 2013, we had already started some sort of discourse. But it's kind of, we would like Pertubuhan Akitek Malaysia or the Lembaga Architect Malaysia to actually open up, and get the likes of Kevin Martlow or other people to debate in institutional backed venue or event. There could be, like certain rules, like don't curse or don't say 4-letter words, and apart from that, we can just have a good, strong debate. We did have some, but it depends on the senior person as well. You see, this is our hierarchical sort of society.
Yeah.
The traditional society where young people talking in a group, and then you it's not that people are not listening, but you'd want to have like an academic or somebody to host the event. So I was one of those who host these events, and but the university colleagues not really like the fact that I host those events. So they have to go out on the limb, like lecturers, when they host such under the universities. So okay, the university is not doing it. What about Pertubuhan Akitek Malaysia? Can they do it? And if they are, that's why I'm going to the other point. We are discussing about the role of Pertubuhan Akitek Malaysia or Malaysian Association Board. Is that Architects Board? No, Malaysian Architects Association in English. So for the speakers out there, PAM, we call it PAM. So that's their role. That's PAM's role. Because LAM is too much of a legal body. So PAM represents all architects, not just some architects, but all architects and all interests. Sure. So that is we would like to put it out that in this podcast now, with Mr.
Please.
Gary Yeow.
Please share it out.
We would
But
like to put it out there that Pam should actually take this role.
no, I do have instead I do have a question to ask you as well, Naziaty. I think that's a very, very good topic to talk about it. Of course, I would love to invite you to
You're
talk
turning it
about this as
around.
well.
This is to interview you.
We are
Where is the
switching
question
roles.
now?
Now the question is, do you think Pam, of course, we respect Pam as the like a community for all, rather than in a meritocratic or quality or qualification or entitlement recognition body, and then if you don't have AR, we don't talk to you. We want to abolish that first. But my question to you is, do you think how important is it for us to have Pam on board? That's my first question, because I have been questioning myself a lot of time.
Okay.
And since the beginning of my podcast, I never asked Pam for a single thing to do anything, because I believe one is not they are not incompetent. It's just that they are not aligned with my principle. In a way, because if we all to look down from the first 10 episodes from my podcast, I always get the students to talk about their final year projects rather than getting those big ARs or big architects or famous architects. I got them afterward because I thought there's a necessity to talk to them in the topics that we don't talk about a lot. Like I spoke to Lok, not just timber architecture. We discussed about childhood, about what he think about architectural practice, what he think about architectural education as well. So therefore, the role of Pam, in my opinion, is not really the key point. But that's why I'm quite curious about your point. In a way, for whatever fantastic job you are doing now, you are not really, we don't have to place our dependence on their side, isn't it?
There is people wanting to listen to what it's about, like demand, market demand. So the PAM's customers, well, if you would call them customers, are architects.
Yeah.
And there is a subscription to PAM, or that PAM's relevance as the association that represent architects in this country. And we know that there are other associations, by the way, but they are not as popular or
influential.
more as influential as PAM. So I never actually discuss about PAM's role in society unless it was to do with a student's project. Somebody is doing PAM Center. There was a student that did PAM Center before the PAM Center was built. And it was on a prominent site. And we asked her to ask very difficult questions, about the role of PAM. And so, through the design thesis, we were critical of PAM. And eventually the programs is to do with a much more democratic, or much more, the space becomes much more inviting, or and stuff like that. This is the vision of a student doing design thesis of PAM, for example. But PAM is not a political party. PAM is not a government institution in a sense that Lembaga Architect Malaysia, or the Malaysian Architects Board, sits there as very strongly aligned with the Works Ministry. Is housed in the same building as JKR, or the Public Works Department. So what I'm trying to say is that there are different individuals that serves that, and PAM is to me. I just want to say it here that there are senior architects out there who, in our society, we have older people and senior people, and maybe if there's anything to do with business, when we talk about PAM and architects is to do with business. So you don't want to drop water face somebody, a senior member, or if a senior member did not like the tone or the way you carry yourself, so they would be influential in advising PAM somehow, because PAM has this tradition of there are senior members, and some of them, I'm just speculating that maybe there is a relationship between the board and the association, with members being friends. So this is our society is acts that way, and is our society is not like British society in a way. That that the influence of someone is deemed to be seen as it's not really good. You're not independent. Like RIBA is not independent of ARB or something. You have to have, you are your own man or your own woman or them, whatever. Again, so I think that I'm observing it from outside. I'm observing it from someone who has been around architecture in Malaysia for a while. I'm interested about these things, and that the architecture profession is very much a profession that is to serve more of the elitists, those with money, those big businesses, and there are people like some of us who do a real community-based architecture, but do other things like broadcasting and podcasting and stuff like that. So for those people in architecture fraternity, when they would like to be interviewed by us, if they think it's worthwhile to go and they see that this interview or discussion that we have could be listened to, and as long as we don't talk about individuals, if not, it'd be like a liability, isn't it? Or somebody could sue you for defamation. Defamation. Apart from that, we could talk as much as we like. I think that is the sentiment so far. So what did you were thinking about something that I said just now? Would you like to go and?
No, I think I do agree. I mean, I can't just like label or classify PAM as the bad cops in this case, because there are people who are willing to make the change, and I can see that. And I was engaged by a few PAM members as well to do activities that comes way later. My point, I wish to make the point. The reason why I asked this question, because the first point I would like to make is I don't want to make to threaten or place PAM on pedestal, or to apply a certain guilt trap for them, because I don't want to do that in a way that they have their own roles. I understand it's a very complicated profession. You have so many to take care of. You want to talk about just purely about the professional profession itself. You have like construction site contracts, blah blah blah. You can talk about everything in that. That's within the framework of profession. But the reason why I couldn't expect them to do more, because if you wanted to talk about the career development, or even well-being, or even the future of architectural education, that's going to be another branching out for them to absorb, which sometimes I think it might be too harsh for them to absorb so many things and to do everything in such a short time. So therefore I didn't expect them to do much of it, but I just thought that at least there should be an open mind to take up more things, and to celebrate much more interdisciplinary practice. I think that's the way to go as well. This is just purely my suggestion. That's the.
I think that there's another point that I don't think Kevin Matlow would mind me saying, that Kevin Matlow is quite a remarkable individual in terms of his thinking, and he's very, very critical. So some people will not want him to be in a some people would not want to attend an event where he would be very critical of them because, so we need individuals who are very intellectual and very critical in our midst, because you and I, we can talk, during in a dialogue, and for somebody who has not heard of the things that has been said before, they might find it interesting, but to get it level up, to actually ask important questions of us, are we ready, as a society, as an architectural fraternity, can we discuss those things?
Yeah, I think that's the point. That's the point that first, I think let's there are there are a few steps to do this. I think the first step is to let's think about what kind of things they want to say. And then there is a second step to package it in a way, not really in a vague disguise, but rather is to package it in a way. That's what I'm always thinking about, because you need to make the language that matches with a certain society or a group of people. We can't just right away. Of course, I appreciate both kind of unpackaged or packaged information, but there is also a need to introduce first, then only we can criticize. The problem with what I see now in Malaysia is we couldn't even accept the packaged information. How can we expect people to take in the criticisms that is not packaged? And then they tell me, whoa, why are you saying this? So I would go for this first step first. Okay, I'm here. I come with peace. I just want to work with you. I want to collaborate with you. And then from there, we can slowly, then people can start slowly to take in. That's what Malaysia architectural education or practice needs first, in a way, rather than shoot in their face and then they will shock. they will be in the shock. So rather, I would just go slowly and introduce first. The first step is really.
Gary, can you talk about a package? Explain this package to me. Some of
package.
What example? A real example of that you think that how come Malaysian architects don't accept even the packaged version? What more, the naked or the straightforward,
raw honest? Well, I mean, that's okay. That's from my experience. Therefore, you can see there. I think the most provoking topic that I have done in my opinion, is less packaged information is the debate podcast I did with Yvonne. So we were debating on the Penang infill island. So that's a South Island competition.
Oh yeah.
So we were talking about that. So I was the one who support I would like to be the
give a bit of background to the listeners what this Penang South Island reclamation.
So it's a competition organized by Penang government. It's in South Penang, and then they proposed like 3 islands, and then they open for competition for international and local architects. In the end, the winners is kind of like a combination of local and international architects. There were so many argument about, of course, mainly about the environmental issues and also the necessity and also the purpose of this project. So I was the one who actually proposed. Okay, sorry. One thing to mention. So that competition was organized like 2 years ago or 1 year. 2 years ago, I think. 2 years or 1 year ago. So it was kind of like proposal for the the whole development of the state, or also when it comes to national level of development to in line with the Industrial Revolution 4.0. We will talk about like AI and also technological advancement. So therefore, the government thought there's a need to come up with this proposal to enhance or to improve or to cultivate this kind of new idea to technically have a floating cities of 3 plots, as I know. So my position at that point in time, I wanted, I'd rather be the bad cops in the sense, who support the idea, while Yvonne plays another role. So if you want to know more, of course you can go there to my podcast to listen more, or there is always a YouTube. It's kind of aggressive in a way, but it's not aggressive in vocabulary, grammatical fault in a way. So it's unpackaged in a way, it's very raw, where expression and ideas and there's no censorship apply into the information. So that's what I thought is unpackaged in a way. Of course, Kevin is someone who I really look up to, and his unpackaged in a way, uncensored information is a very hard information for some to penetrate, to understand as well, because I think it's really the tone and also the words that people are not familiar with. So when I say unpackaged, that's really can date back to what kind of podcast that I did before the debate podcast, where a lot of things are very tame and also the questions are not provocative and sensitive, because that's what I thought by unpackaged in a way, to try to think about topics and also conversations that can be relayed to students and general public. So that's unpackaged in a way, also try to understand what's happening in Malaysia climate, what kind of words they use, what kind of tone they use, and then I try to follow it so that I can gain support in a way, or even certain resonance from students. And then they can know, okay, this is kind of like a critique. What's next? Therefore, I come up with the debate. Therefore, the debate kind of switch on another unpackaged information. So package in a way always wanted to understand the habitat. It's like, if let's say I'm like a frog and I like my habitat to be a certain condition. So there are two ways to do it. One is you go to a new habitat that is totally fit your own, or you wanted to go to an existing habitat and change the habitat to fit yourself. I see Malaysia situation is I wanted to be the frog that go to a existing habitat and to make myself habitable to this existing habitat. And then I tell the villagers, my fellow frogs, to sort of like tell them what I think, what kind of habitat that I came from, and then to tell them what's a good thing about things that you can change about your habitat. So there are so many examples that I notice. A lot of my peers like Yvonne, or Jowin, Haziq, so many people that I met here, they are all Malaysians. They graduated from Malaysia universities. And especially a few friends, I've noticed that when they go back to Malaysia, they have the mindset where they wanted to change the habitat to fit their species of frog in a way. So therefore, it's a bit hard to penetrate, because in order to change the community, let's say 100 people, based on one requirement, is very, very long journey. You can change, but it's going to take some time. But for me, my way is to come in and say, okay, hi, I'm a new friend. I try to understand how things work here, and then I will start to talk about things. So therefore, it's really the...
Yeah. In disability activism, where I have engaged a lot with, there come a time when I cannot do certain things anymore. You know, when we talk about the roles that each of us play. So I concentrated with younger activists, and in a way, taught them how to understand the language of engineers and architects. You know, I gave them information on understanding that architects learn things or train in a certain way. So that's why, in order for you to approach architects or the technical people, because these activists, they have varied backgrounds from, you know, Islamic studies or IT, or, you know, and they just have the common thing among them is that all of them are disabled persons. So and they're interested in changes that society should be doing to get to obtain rights for person with disability. So yeah, the thing is, the audience, you are talking about the audience who would, you know, if it's interesting that you use the word package, because if I come with a package that doesn't look good, all thorn and for as a present to somebody, they doubt my good intentions, because I need to have a package that is palatable or easy on the eye or something like that.
Yeah.
And audiences are finicky like that. And knowing the audience is an important thing. So
Yeah.
when the audience that you are addressing are students of architecture, now,
Mm.
yeah, it goes back to when you start talking about students of architecture, then I was thinking that's many things that student architecture don't know. And if we would
Yeah.
tell them that this is the problem, they didn't ask for it. They didn't want to know this problem, or this
Yeah.
information that we gave them.
Yeah.
So they would get stressed about it, and they would react to it in a way that it could be very heavy-handed. I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
been in
Yeah.
that situation before, and it will make other people, not really think that you are the one who actually influence the students. One thing about students is that one thing about if we look at the aims and then we look at the goals and then the objectives. The goal is there's one goal to do with discourse with architecture students. There's another goal
Yeah.
with the fresh graduate, another goal with the mid-level architect,
Yeah.
another goal with the whole architecture fraternity, obviously, with different concerns that they're interested with, right? So what
Yeah.
are the concerns that students are interested with? Maybe they would give complaints that we're not able to explore enough, or we're learning the same thing again in
Yeah.
fourth year as we did in third year, things like that. This is the things that I come across,
Yeah.
So they're interested in at the moment their own plight, the plight of being not confident of
Yeah.
graduating and getting a job. So there are all
Yeah.
this concern. So if you talk about fresh graduates, they have that transition, and then and trying to get a toehold, or to get what do you call it, comfortable, and to the next stage of life. Some of them want to settle down and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So the environment is created as it is. If it's a problem, the environment is a problem. Like we raised the problem of the reclamation of the islands in the south of Penang. The conversation is also with the activists. I know some Penang activists who fought for this with the fishermen, yeah, and that is the discussion that I had with this other activists, because I come from the activism world myself, not just the architecture world. But the thing that is common between us and them, the other activists, is social activism.
Yeah.
It's about society, and that discussion, we package it in a way that society's concerns.
Yeah.
What are society's concerns about overdevelopment? What are society's concerns? So we actually became the medium or the voice. It just happened that we're architects or trained as architects. So for those who are in institutions or even the PAM who have, period nasi or the rice bowl to protect, they wouldn't like it, obviously, or their friends are being attacked, they wouldn't like it. So these are just simple. When people talk about things, it's actually very personal. People may say that, we don't deal with personal things, but in actual fact, everything is personal.
It is. I mean, that's what beautiful about a collective society, because collective, in a way, you have your own voice. I have my own voice, and anyone else have their own voice. Therefore, it's collective, and it's kind of compilation of all the voices in one. That's what the beautiful things about it. And so now I remember one thing, the question that you asked me about, like, what am I working as an office manager? Therefore, that really raised up a lot of thoughts for me to question the how business run. Because in the end, let's be honest, if we wanted to run an architectural business, there are two terms here: architecture and business. Architecture, I'm gonna put it aside. Let's not define it. It's too complicated at this moment. but it's a type. It's technically it's like engineering or music or art or food and beverage, restaurant, whatever. That's a sector how I see it at this moment. Business, when we look it into the second term of it, it's simple as to make money. Well, I mean, not just money, of course, but also a profit. Maybe it's a social profit. Is it a community profit? It's technically it's a benefit for anyone else. But of course, when it comes to like business, as my role, I wanted to make sure the profit in a way like a well-being for my colleague to feel happy, feel fulfilled, and also the company running well, financially stable. So that's technically what I learned about architecture business. So when a society or a group of people tend to amplify or magnify a certain kind of profit, let's call it financial or monetary profit, when it's so huge, we tend to forget about so many things. We forgot about how our part one or part two, how are they going to develop into another new phase of life if they wanted to? They therefore come up with my thoughts. Okay, I wanted to write. Why not? Not because I'm architect doesn't mean that I can't write. So, and also that same applies to event curation, podcasts, meeting people, do things that apart from erecting a new building. So that's technically, of course, inspired by my role in a very realistic position as a office manager to think about marketing, finance, invoices, client relationship management, admin and system, and all these things that allows me to really think about in the future of the specialization in architecture is gonna be so obvious. Where I mean, in now we can see in architecture there, architecture student come out, they can be illustrator, they can be someone who do CGI or renderings, they can do magazine, they can do music, they can do so many things. Therefore, the beauty of being an architecture students is allows you to have so many options to think about what kind of direction you want to go. That's the thing that I think I always tell my students or whoever attended to my event.
If you have, I'm giving you a few minutes to actually summarize that. If you, maybe you want to answer what architecture education should be so that this, are you saying that is great what architecture students are able to do now? Or that there is something that architecture students could be more of, because when you say, do we need to change the architecture education system, for example?
Well, I mean, I can try to relate back to the story of frog and habitat. Now, I mentioned that I mentioned earlier. I think the frog. Well, I mean, not saying like the political kata kind of frog. Okay, I'm just saying as a kind of adaptable.
Yes, it's not a political jump frog.
It's not political, but it's just a metaphor. So I think we are in a habitat where we are good enough. I can't expect people to do more, but rather I would expect us as the frogs in this existing habitat to think more of what we can do in the existing habitat. I think I don't expect people to change anything, whatever happened with the module or teaching systems in Malaysia. I have no comment on that because that needs a lot of research and also data to prove. Therefore, I couldn't comment a lot. But what I already expect is when it comes down to the personality of the students to really think about and also expand their horizon on thinking architecture practice. That's all I'm only wish. This is actually a comment on the personal level of learning process rather than the formal learning, which is means like, whatever you attended in the university. But I would encourage, and one thing I could change, I hope to change, is actually the mentality of each student rather than changing the education system. Therefore, through podcasts or through informal events, that I hope that will advocate more rather than asking the formal structure to make any big change. Okay,
that is coming to the end of our session.
Thanks, Naziaty.
I think we went all over. We went a lot of, not all over the place, but we went to many topics, and but you did answer the question at the end about why an office manager in a way that we could understand what you're a person who need to experience what is business. I mean, there's many ways to be an architect, and why not as an office manager and architecture practice and management, for example. That's
I think also, sorry, I think one thing is you are not necessary to be an office manager to learn what I what I learned. Of course, you can try to go to be a writer, or try to be a teaching assistant, or even go to, you can do whatever you want, is as long as aligned with your interest and passion. And then you start to realize what you are doing is what you love. It's not, of course, office manager is what I love, therefore I have a different, very specific path.
Yes, I think like your friend Chia Yvonne also exploring things in her way, writing and all this, right? Publishing. And many other people that we know. And if I can say, teaching architecture, like what I've done for many, many years, is one way of understanding architecture, a natural progression, because we're in it. We're in the architecture world, and and businesses can be not necessarily an architecture practice as well. Businesses can be, if you want to be a business person, or you can be a business person and make profits to sustain yourself. So okay, Gary, would you like to say anything else before we finish and conclude?
Thanks a lot. That has been really, really productive conversation, and it's very fun conversation. I hope it's kind of like it's sitting in between the packaged and unpackaged conversation, actually. But I one last thing is, I hope any listener to really think about the outside the box, in a way, to think about the critique about the profession, rather than just purely critique within profession. We talk about green architecture, biophilic design, phenomenology, modular system, or whatsoever, metaverse, whatever you want to say. It's very often talks about what architects can associate with, but we don't talk about architects themselves. There are so many things we haven't talked about, like gender equality, pay gap, disabled community, our well-being or welfare of part 1 and part 2, or even part 3. They do have some issues. Part 3, they the money is not earning enough to align with inflation, things like that. So there are so many things that we are not critic about. And then we talk about big dreams, like, oh, I'm gonna do a farming to solve the food security problem. I'm like, okay, that's a good idea, but you haven't talked about yourself. I mean, that's really like, you need to think about your roles as an architect and how do you want to sustain it, to project a long-term goal. Before I go, I would love to recommend a few books that really inspire myself to be who I am now, to where I am now. There are 5 books, actually. Alan de Botton, Architectural Happiness. That's the first book, and it's very romantic. But if you think about it in a other way, it can be quite realistic in a way. Jeremy Till, I hope he is, or he was, Dean of Central St. Martin in London. His book called Architecture Depends, that changed my mind. Corbusier Towards a New Architecture. A lot of people don't like him, but I think you should give it a try to read that book. 4th book is Rowan Moore, Why We Build, and the last book is Charles Darwin, Origin of Species. So these 5 books changed my mind, I would say. But if you like to know more, I hope you can dive into it a little bit and let me know what you think, or even with Naziaty as well. Yeah, that's all from me. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Naziaty.
Great piece of advice there from Gary Yeow, and good luck in also your checkout, listeners. The XYZ podcast that Gary Yeow hosts, and we'll be following we'll be following you. Thank you so much, Gary. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks.